Okay, I'm recording. Okay, so we've been working together since a new year. Is that right?
October of last year.
Oh my God, time is just, I don't even get it anymore. I swear. Okay, so we've been working together for a while. So, and you came to me, oh my God, why did I forget that? You came to me with significant emotional eating and binge eating issues. You've been really defined by wanting to be thin for a long time, right? In your family and in your culture and whatnot. So we got to the point where I had thought you might be ready to do the HCG protocol.
Yeah.
And so we started around 2 weeks ago. Is that right? 2 weeks ago. And we did a lot of preparation in terms of trying to help get you aware that you have to not care about the weight loss. We've got to get you to where you don't feel punished by the restrictions of the protocol. And before you started the round, how did you feel about it?
First of all, I had decided that I was never going to diet again or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then when we talked about doing it and just doing it for the body or whatever, so that was kind of what I was thinking I was doing it for, and that conversation lasted for some days, and then I started to feel deprived and hungry. I don't know, always when I did the protocol, I struggled a lot. I hear people saying they're not hungry, and I'm not sure that I'm hungry. It's just how I don't like to be deprived like that or something. I don't know.
Well, we had talked the first week, and you were forcing a third meal, not because of hunger, but because you felt deprived. You just felt like under restraint. And our conversation, our last session last week, we really focused on that position of feeling like a martyr and that victim, poor me environment in your mind where you previously could easily cope with food, right? That was your go-to to feel compensated for being overworked, for the stress of overworking, especially since you have a child at home. You remember that?
Yeah.
So the need may not have actually been the need may not have actually been physical. Not to say that you weren't hungry, but much of what you were explaining to me, because I gave you the freedom to add protocol food. Your goal was you shouldn't have ever experienced hunger because you're allowed to eat more food if you have more hunger. The problem you were experiencing wasn't that so much as it was the feelings of being victimized and punished by the restrictions of the protocol.
Yeah. So that first week I added more food just because you had said I could. But then we spoke, and then I was fine for a few days. But then this past weekend, I had this function that I had to go for work, so I knew I was just going to eat a normal meal because, I'm not going to say I'm on the protocol or anything.
Yeah.
So I knew that meal that was Friday was going to be off protocol. But then after that meal, I just went crazy the whole weekend.
Let's talk about how that felt emotionally, because I think this is such an opportunity for you to really look again at the dysfunction around the desire to be thinner, right? And the fact that we took that away, right? That whole concept of doing this for thinnerness we removed, but did you really hold on to that concept, hoping I'll be thinner?
I guess now thinking back, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, people who don't hold on to that don't have the same problems. As soon as someone feels deprived and pissed off by the protocol, it's a sign they probably had some physical expectations and outcomes by it. And the fact that we're not weighing and we're not promoting that physical outcome puts you in a position to really, it emphasizes the dysfunction you have with food and the entitlement you have to food that isn't physical, right? So if we get rid of the emphasis on the physical result, you're forced to really look at how you're emotionally dealing with the protocol in relation to the way you normally eat. And so by getting rid of the compensation around body image, you're left with your actual feelings about food. So it's somewhat exposing to where you're at too. That was, again, another reason that I take the risk of doing the protocol and take the risk of a relapse, which is what's happened for you, because you haven't had these issues for months. Right? So the risk of the protocol is a risk of a relapse. And that's what happened. I don't think that that's a terrible thing if it, in the end, gets you to where you need to be in terms of just being aware of how you're relating to food and your body, how they tie together, right? And also, again, it's not just the body image. It's how dieting over years has impacted how you're relating to food. Because before the work that you and I did together, before we started talking, how you related to food psychologically was being enabled by the idea that a diet could fix the damages of that dysfunction. So you can abuse the body with food because you believe that the diet concept can fix it, right? Because it won't it's going to fix the physical issues or the risk of gaining weight. Does it make sense? So you're balancing this pendulum swing around, I'm going to restrict my food, and so therefore I have the entitlement now to reward myself with food. And so you created these environments. It's not all the time, but it was specifically for you under stress, work stress, right? Where you balanced work stress with food. So dieting enabled that dysfunctional relationship for you. And it's also telling to me also, Vespa, what's up? Can you hear her crying in the background?
A little bit.
This tells me, too, that you may have, even though you weren't emotionally eating excessively or binge eating over the last few months in your recovery, that you were still probably negotiating around some dysfunctional eating for that work stress balance, that family work stress balance that you felt, I have to work harder, therefore I deserve to eat this food. So you may have given yourself freedom of candy, given yourself the freedom of, or actually taken even your hunger scale and given yourself lenience around more palatable foods because it's more easily managed with the hunger scale. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, but that's kind of where I was, and that's why I thought, let's see what the protocol does, because I saw myself, I wasn't so sure that I was overeating a little bit.
Before?
Before we started the protocol.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think you kind of knew that, but you were always, you weren't gaining weight. So it was something that you continued. See, that was the other thing that you really struggled with too, was the fact that I'm not gaining weight. So you gave yourself lenience to be more dysfunctional because of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this weekend was terrible for you in terms of the protocol. And if we go back to the moment you actually had a binge, so this was a binge weekend. You actually binged. You said it was like terrible.
Yeah.
Go back into the conversations you were having in your mind. So this is the opportunity I was talking about, that this is going to give you the opportunity to really look at how this happened, because it's so obvious relative to the stringency and obvious boundaries of the protocol. right?
Yeah. What was interesting is that the conversation in my mind were a little different because of my conversations with you, where I had the plan was for my body, my metabolism, like for my health. So I was very guilty and very, oh my God, no, I'm ruining everything. What am I doing? I'm like, probably my hormones are gonna go crazy now. I'm gonna like be sick.
Well, that thought process has more to do not with your health so much. I know that you're saying that. That was probably after the fact. You're describing right now as the after shame, not the during shame of a binge. During shame of a binge, meaning the binge impulse begins with shame about a cheat. So you may have thought, oh man, I cheated, I ruined it. So I might as well just get what I can in today because it's already ruined. That's not how health works. If you are actually thinking about the health of the body, does it make any sense in any way for you to continue to binge the rest of the day?
No.
Exactly. So that's why I'm calling you out. I'm calling your thoughts out right now. Not that you're doing it intentionally, but you're confused. The moment you felt bad was a moment about your weight, because that's all or nothing on the protocol. Nothing to do with your health.
But that's what I'm saying about how weird a binge is, that if you don't want to gain weight, why do you continue to eat? And
because there's an illusion.
Case, like, if I don't want to ruin the protocol, why do I continue?
Because there's an illusion that you'll fix it tomorrow. That you'll actually tomorrow follow the protocol. That the protocol becomes your fall guy. It becomes the person that takes the responsibility of the issue. You wouldn't binge. You wouldn't have gone through the day in a full-fledged shame-induced body image, shame-induced binge, okay, if you didn't believe that somehow the protocol could fix it. So my guess would be, and I could be wrong, so tell me if I'm wrong, you might have a different response, but my guess is in that day, the day that you actually began the binge process, you were feeling you were going to lose weight that day anyways. So you might as well give yourself the freedom of the whole day, thinking ahead of time. Before someone does that, they actually commit to fixing the damages ahead of time. Somehow. It may not be, some people it's not immediately. It's not like a bulimic where they ahead of time go, I'll just puke it up. That you may have thought, well, tomorrow I will be, and the rest of the week I will be strict on the protocol. Partly because you now have shame and guilt around what may have actually physically happened on the protocol. So it started off, I'm not going to lose weight anyways, I might as well. Floodgates open, right? And I'll fix it tomorrow. I'll be perfect on the protocol, right? And so you give yourself the whole day. There's physical ramifications. I'm assuming you felt horrible. Absolutely physically horrible, right? Horrible. Now comes the shame of what have I done to my body? What have I done to my body? So all of that has to have a balance, right? If you're feeling this dark, you've got to find some way to fix it. That's how fight or flight or survival mechanisms work, especially when it comes to something like I'm a piece of shit. That's that social dog primal feeling we have inside. I'm a failure. I got to fix it. I got to fix who I am. So tomorrow I'll be perfect on the protocol and I'll do it perfectly. Ultimately, that perfectionism puts the protocol into a very strict psychological environment to where you're more likely to overeat, right? And so the next day, I'm assuming you began with, I got to be perfect, and then you cheated once, and the whole thing went, again, screw it, I might as well. Yeah. And then is this accurate?
That is accurate. But thinking back, I see that it is kind of what you're saying. But while I'm in the moment, it's not that clear. Say that one more time. While you're in the moment, it's what? It's not that clear. Like the intentions are good, and I'm done, and da da da, and boom, again.
Yeah, and you're right. It's confusing when you're in it. It just feels super impulsive, but it's very logical. You're going through quite a bit of thinking. Am I wrong?
No, no.
You're just not questioning your thoughts. So they're running. They're just
Yeah, exactly.
so I'm now after the fact going, you need to go back and question those thoughts, but look and piece it together. So for you, you can see where you had control over it. You made choices around it. And what has to be removed for this type of behavior to go away? First thing you have to look at is the feelings of victimization, that martyr position around my life sucks, I'm being deprived, poor me, this is about me, right? The other thing is knowing you're going into a work dinner where you don't necessarily have that freedom. What would have been different? Okay. How would it have been different if you just acknowledged that's something I need to do? I'm going to just do it and then move on. I'm going to give myself grace, give the body some grace to be able to deal with it. Whether I lose weight today or not doesn't matter. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to do anything about it. So I'm going to give myself the lenience of this food. I haven't failed anything. I'm doing the best I can with this protocol.
Yeah, that's what I thought going into it. And actually, I was like, well, there's no way around it because, if it was something with my family or something that I could avoid, I would have. So I was clear that I was just going to eat whatever, and then that dinner, one meal, and then move on with the protocol the next day.
Yeah, but do you think maybe the floodgates of your... Okay, so here's a question. I want to see what your answer is. And there is no right or wrong answer. I actually want you to just think about it and tell me what happened. After you ate that meal, hold on. After you ate that meal, did the floodgates of feeling deprived show up? I deserve it. I earn it. I should be able to eat that dessert. And so you basically went beyond the meal. Did the feelings that you've been experiencing of poor me, I'm being deprived, did that show up? And then was that the beginning of the binge? Or was it, I'm not going to lose weight anyway, so I might as well? Or was it a combination?
Yeah, it was a combination. Thinking back now on the next day where I felt, like my fingers felt like I was like maybe holding a lot of water or whatever. Like when you break the protocol diet, you feel like extremely, it's like if I had gained a lot of weight or I felt puffy or something maybe. Thinking back, that had to do with it. Like, I ruined it. Boom.
I might as well just get what I really want now because now that there's no reason for me to do, yeah. So you're saying the second day was more about body image than it was the first day of binging?
Probably, yes. Yeah.
So the first day of binging may have been feeding that bottled up sense of victimization.
Yeah. Like, it was like, I've been deprived, so now I overate on that dinner, obviously. Ate everything, and etc. And then the next day, the body image kind of kicked in also.
Mm-hmm. So then you're like, screw it, I might as well. This is where it's so fascinating to me. And I want you to observe it. Don't judge yourself, but just observe this from the outside. How fascinating it is that how important being thinner or losing weight or not gaining was. And in those moments, how you just don't really give a shit. You just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Right, but you only don't give a shit because there's this unconscious contract with some idea it's going to get fixed.
It's very weird and very destructive. I know.
It's absolutely destructive. But it's not that you're intending that. it's an illusion that it's not destructive because it's going to get fixed. There was something in your mind around this will get fixed. So it may have begun that idea that, okay, the protocol will fix this later. I see this all the freaking time. People contact me all the time on around of the protocol in the state you were in this weekend. How do I get out of this? How do I get out? Because you're binging every day, thinking the next day that you're going to be perfect on protocol and that will fix the binging. And you just continue to have this cycle. This is where that binge eating cycle on the protocol just is, it can be very, very intense. So you, on your own, decided to stop your round. So you must have gotten bad real fast for you to do that, especially without talking to me. Not that I care. It's your protocol, not mine, but you did it on your own.
Yeah, I'm not here at the point where, you know how you describe that people do it and it's calm. And I had a whole weekend of binging, and then obviously Monday I went back seriously on the diet, and then Wednesday, by Wednesday I'm already kind of in my thoughts and wanting to eat and eat more of the protocol food and like binging on the protocol.
Well, you know, it sounds like when you were you're trying to fix the damages of that binging weekend. I'm assuming like when you went on Monday, Tuesday, that you were really like, I got to fix this. I got to focus. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah.
That ultimately, you were probably being overreactive, meaning over-restrictive, overly, and that ultimately, again, triggers that feeling of I'm being deprived. Any false move could trigger another binge, right? Because you're kind of going, that pendulum swing of all or nothing started swinging again.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So I would actually say good job for you for knowing that this isn't a good place. I'm not there yet. I could clearly, is it becoming clear to you where your mind is in reality? For recovery.
Yeah. I'm still a little, I thought I was never going to binge again.
We talked about this, but you're right. It's like the moment your weight becomes big or your deprivation or feeling of victimization becomes big in terms of how you prioritize your mindset, those are triggers.
Yeah.
And so you were clearly coping and managing the same dysfunction in an easier way. But as soon as we made it not easy, that dysfunction showed up. It's like, here it is. It was there before. Now that you're here, look back at the last, 3 months of recovery that you've been through, and you can probably see, yeah, I was still dysfunctional in there. It was just so significantly reduced than it was before you started working with me.
Yeah.
So it was relatively recovered, but you're not. This type of experience to me has become really important. So I don't think this was a failed protocol in terms of your recovery process. Of course, physiologically, it's a high risk situation physically. So that's why I wait so long. And I do it's like a filtering process around when I feel someone is there, I don't recommend the protocol for many people anymore until they get to a certain place, and they obviously have the physical body that can handle it, right? I don't recommend it for someone who only has 10 pounds to lose or in their mind. You kind of met that criteria in my mind where I thought, well, here's the risk, and we presented the risk, right? But you're not aware until you're here and you go, oh, now I get it. Now that I've been through that, when she said to me, if I have any form, it's not just detaching from body image, it's detaching from food image. And this idea that I'm entitled to this dysfunctional relationship with food that was only there because of the diet industry, it really makes it more clear. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You see that more clearly now, or are you still kind of coming out of it?
What do you mean coming out of it?
Coming out of the protocol, still in that binge. Are you still in the cycle of like the frantic binge purge type of mentality? Okay.
No.
Good. So do you see now in hindsight what I was talking about in terms of preparing you for this protocol and the risks of doing it, and also the benefits in terms of recovery, the recovery process from the eating disorder and body image stuff?
Yeah, I see the benefit because I was kind of going through the motions and whatever. I needed this shake up to I don't know, to continue on my process. It's not being a straight line, basically.
No, and you were thinking, oh, I'm ready relative to the comparison between how terrible your relationship with food was then to what it was before the protocol. And ultimately going through the protocol makes you aware of, oh, there's still problems. I just didn't see them, or I was managing them in a way that it was balanced.
Exactly.
Right. It really makes you kind of aware, like what we talked about that last time we talked specifically about your work stress and the idea that you are very identified by your work and your perfectionism in your work, and how that has created an incredible amount of stress to hold yourself to that level of expectation when you have children at home, when you have all these things you're managing, right? And how your relationship with food was your compensation. I want to feel compensated for having to work hard for these other employees that I'm not holding accountable, right? Where it's your own bullshit. And how I deserve to eat this food, and how before you were probably still doing that, but it was in a way that you felt was manageable, versus before it was immanageable because you were binging. Make sense?
Exactly.
So now with this protocol, it was like, holy shit, I didn't realize I was using food that way. You kind of knew there was a stress connection, but you never questioned why you were having that stress. You never questioned the standards of workload you were holding yourself to. So to some degree, the protocol has actually made that more conscious for you.
Yep.
So right now, so today is, what's today? Is today Friday?
Yeah.
Today's Friday. Oh my God. Seriously? I'm having issues with time. I swear. I don't know what it is. Every day is running into each other. It's all just, anyways. I must be under stress. See, this to me is stress. Taxes. I was meeting my accountant all day yesterday talking about taxes. It was crazy. No shit. No, for reals. We're going through everything, and it's just like, oh my God. It's miserable. Anyways, what was I talking about? My time.
So the protocol kind of brought up that stress with work and whatever, and it's helped in the way that I see that there are things that I could change at work and things like that. So it's also, helps in other areas.
Yeah, because your whole life you shouldn't feel so victimized by it that you deserve and are entitled to a compensation that actually hurts your body.
Exactly.
Like why is your mindset in that position, that victim martyr position? And it's oftentimes because you're holding yourself to a standard that is too difficult to manage in reality. And so you're not questioning the standard. And what happens when you're not willing to budge the standard is the pressure on other people goes up. Your expectations for what other people do goes up, especially in that team environment. This is like me in housework. When I started having kids, I like to have a clean house. I like to have organized. I like to whatever. But once you start having kids and kids get older, as you know, as you have kids yourself, it's very difficult to manage a toddler and children who are, 5 and 6 and 7 years old, where they just don't understand, they don't grasp the benefit of vacuuming your room or picking up your toys. To them, that's like chores. That's punishment, right? Where I had to, in order to keep my sanity, I had to lower my standards of cleanliness in the house. Otherwise, I was just angry at my kids all the time. Would you say that's like you in your work environment with your employees?
Yeah.
I know that's really hard. It's not as easy as it sounds. It's not like it's cleaning the house when you're dealing with numbers and work and production and expectations. But you said yourself that you're holding yourself to these expectations. No one else is.
Yes, exactly. No, and I started to make little changes. Like, I think it's helped to see that I can't continue the way I'm going.
No, otherwise you're going to need to have a coping mechanism to bridge the gap between your expectations and reality. For you, that was food. That's why the protocol felt so punishing, and it wasn't the same palatable food. You could have easily said, well, I'll just eat celery. But that's for you, it's very specific, the type of reward that you want out of food. Yeah. And the protocol punished you by not giving you that reward. Plus, we took away the benefit of weight loss. So you were backed into a corner of reality looking at your real shit, right? So the benefit is really there. Right. And you knew it too. I remember our conversation. You're like, I don't know. I hate it. This is terrible. I don't know why I'm doing this. It was like you totally forgot about our purpose. To me, as the observer, it's incredible. Like I would love someday for this to be something studied by psychs, therapists, physiologists, to be able to look at how incredible the protocol is at really making unconscious bullshit conscious. And people who self-sabotage, self-medicate, compensate, all that behavior psychologically under something like this, specific to people with food issues, is so flippin' obvious.
Yeah.
Right? And you can feel that it's not it's out of reality. That's the thing that is amazing to me, is that it's not just me saying, here, look in the mirror, look at your shit. It's not just me. You can feel it. You're like, oh my God, I'm not starving. The physical benefits would be amazing for the body. So the crazy thing is when you realize, why am I so aggravated when I shouldn't be? Yeah. You had to have had that. You had to have experienced that awareness to get, to grasp. This isn't just the protocol. The protocol isn't just crazy messed up. Granted, it is super strict. There had to have been some self-awareness around, I'm having problems.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Especially when we talked after the first week. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my God. I can't believe.
Well, you knew you were having problems when we first talked on the phone.
Yeah.
You were like,
and the interesting part, I still couldn't do it.
You mean couldn't change your perceptions during the process? That's okay.
My attitude toward it.
I think that's awesome. I know, I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you or like, you deserve it. It's just like, this is why it becomes so conscious, because you're like, oh my God, this is really dumb. Like, why am I crazy? And it's obvious to you. It's so not easy to make blame. Before the protocol, you wouldn't have noticed any of it because you're managing it. You are still capable of manipulating food, even if it's on a minor scale, to continue the conditioning of that dysfunctional relationship with food that is only there because you have a dysfunctional relationship with your ego around superior work standards. Yeah. It is incredible, ability. This protocol provides such an incredible ability to see the picture, to tell the story. Right? There's a story behind that impulsiveness with food. It's not just the food is palatable and addictive. That's so small. Right?
Yeah.
I know. So what do we do now? Okay, that's what I was actually going to say when I lost my frame of thought around what day it is. So what are you doing? Are you even following any part of the protocol at this point? When was your last day of the injections, and what did you do with your HCG?
Well, the HCG is still in the refrigerator.
Put it in the freezer.
That's when?
You can go back on the protocol, but we got to get your head straight. But so what I'm going to suggest is you put it in the freezer if you don't plan to do it until or ever again. That could be the case, which is fine with me.
Oh, it can go in the freezer?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only reason why I didn't throw it out is because, I don't know.
Because you spent money on it?
Exactly.
I'm like...
Exactly. But...
I don't know about you, but I don't like to burn money.
Yeah, I feel like I would burn bills if I did that, but I'm like, oh, no, I can't. But I haven't gone off the deep end with the eating because I have HCG in me still.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that last injection was Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm thinking, actually, I was going to ask you to do the no starch because I don't want my hormones to go crazy and now,
okay,
so on top of everything, eat and gain 50 pounds.
Okay, well, so notice how you didn't give a shit the days you were binging about that concept. Just a thought. Because you think that somehow it's going to get fixed. So just on a side note. Whereas now you're realizing I'm not going to be fixing anything anymore. So all of a sudden the concept of fixing it now that you're off the protocol, now you're actually have to it's like being completely conscious about these decisions now, right? What would happen if I were to say, okay, well, you're going to start up on the protocol again on Monday, okay? What would happen today?
Oh my God, maybe I would go crazy.
You might, because you're forecasting the feelings of punishment and deprivation.
Yeah. Oh, it's been so different since I didn't inject anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little relaxed again.
Well, you're now more present. That would be a way to think about it. Like before, you weren't present with your decisions. You were living in the future of your fix-it, of that future deprivation because you got to fix the damages. Once you let go of the protocol, what happens is you have to now think about your decisions. You have to really consider, would I eat this just because I'm feeling pissed off about work? You have to really be conscious now. There's no fix-it.
Yeah.
Make sense?
I like that mental state so much better.
Good. Well, we should just stay here and get back into where that pendulum swing is not swinging anymore. It's just, there's no emotional highs and lows around what's going on. So your question is actually really good and really important. What do you do when you've been on a round of the very low calorie protocol where you actually have some risks physically because you've been starving your gut, starving your intestines, starving certain organs and whatnot? Even if you've been binging, the goal is that we let your body naturally desensitize from it. The problem here that we run into is if in any way, again, because of your perceptions around entitlement to food and stress with food and how you get around food when you're stressed, is if it's restricted in any way, you're going to basically go through another binge cycle. Make sense?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see, actually. I think it's a good test.
Well, I love that you're saying that, because you are getting a sense of, I don't want to do it anymore, so maybe I won't do it. Is that what you're feeling?
Well, exactly. Well, I'm coming from the calmness that I felt since I decided not to, to quit the protocol.
Mm-hmm.
But it's maybe a fake sense of confidence that
I don't know. It's worth. I like that you're willing to risk and try. To me, that's not just fake. That is a sense of will. You're willing. That's good. But did you understand what I said around the risks of if it's too, even if you, so I have clients who come to me binging on the first phase, and I got to try to get them to transition into the second phase. And the risk is that the second phase may feel also restrictive to that entitlement or deprivation or victim position. That poor me, I'm a victim, I'm being punished.
I've been on that stage too, because of the no carbs, no fruit.
You get my point? Like, the problem isn't the protocol, it's your position around and the victim. The victim position is your problem. Protocol wasn't your problem.
Yeah.
Do you see that clearly?
I do.
So do we enable the victim and say, don't even follow the protocol? What do we do? Because the victim in you, that little brat, I'm using your language. You're the one that said it's a little brat. I'm a little brat inside. Okay.
A big one, not a little one.
Okay. So it's not me calling you a brat. It's you. So don't be offended when I say you're a little brat.
I am.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That little brat doesn't want to do the protocol. That little brat really doesn't give a shit about your body. So the problem is we're negotiating with a brat right now. But that's what we have to do, because that's where you're at. That's where you're, what would it take? What is this going to take for you to change, to take the oxygen away from the brat? To stop giving it the voice? What's going to have to change for that brat to stop controlling everything? Because you got off the protocol for that brat.
Yeah.
That brat threw such a fit. Threw such a flippin' fit.
It's like when a child is having a tantrum and you give them what they want just so you don't...
Yeah, that's like saying, I got to go to the grocery store, but your child is having such a fit that you can't go grocery shopping.
Exactly.
So you can't be a responsible person because the brat is so loud and so controlling in your head and is literally taking over to where you fed it. You gave it what it wanted, and it binged its brains out, and then you felt bad about the consequences, feel the pressure to clean up after the brat.
Totally.
Enough to where you're quitting the protocol because the brat can't handle it. But then the responsible part of you is like, but it's causing all the damage and I don't want to keep on cleaning it up. So I'm going to quit because I don't want to clean it up anymore. So there's that part where it benefits you as the enabler of that brat in your head.
Yeah.
So I just won't go grocery shopping anymore. So we're going to quit the protocol and I won't have to clean it up. But then again, the brat is now defining where you're at.
That's true.
That's the narcissist. That's the narcissism. What I call the brat is the superior voice that I deserve what I want. At all costs, at any risk, no matter who it hurts, to include the body I'm in, right?
Yeah, it's horrible. I want to have my cake and eat it too. It's horrible.
So this is where in recovery you have to question, how do I stop giving that position? Why do I give that position power? Why does the brat have so much power? And you have to really contemplate it, because you're the only one that has the answer. I can't answer that for you. Besides saying it's an ego thing, it's a narcissism thing, fear of inferiority, not wanting to be perceived as a failure. So you're forcing yourself to do shit you don't want to do. It goes against what you really want to do, and you feel entitled as a brat to your food, whether it hurts the body or not. But at the same time, you don't want the damages either. So it's a terrible place to be in.
Could it be that that's one of the few things that are really controllable? Because, or in my mind, I'm a slave of everything else. I'm a mom, I'm a worker, I'm a daughter, and I have all these things that I have to do, and maybe this is the one part that I control.
Of course. It's it's the one independent thing you give to yourself as compensation for feeling a slave to all of these things. But the thing is this. You and I both know that there are certain relationships that do require work that you would never want to give up, like being a mom. I can sit here and tell you right now that I'm a victim to my daughter's travel team volleyball expenses. I'm freaking poor because she wants to play a luxury sport, right? There's certain sacrifices that we make, but we don't want to give that sacrifice up. There's a value in the sacrifice, right? But there are certain sacrifices you're making that you're not willing to let go because of the ego.
Exactly.
Those are the ones you might want to think about letting go,
Yeah.
Like, do you really want to not be home with your kids so that you can work harder at work?
No.
Right? This was like, I have a client, and she's probably going to hear this video. She also had a similar work identity and ego relative to her work production and how amazing she is at being on time. And, work is the most important thing. And to be valued, you have to be the perfect at work environment, blah, blah, blah. But she could manage it at some point in her life. It was manageable. So she could sustain the ego without having consequences. But at some point it changed. Her parents are getting older and she's caretaking for the parents now. She's also volunteering at the church organization. I think I told you about this, didn't I?
Yes, I think so.
She's got a new granddaughter she wants to be with. So she's also taking on being on call for the granddaughter. So not only is she running a business, holding herself to these pretentious egoic standards of work grandiosity, but she's managing the on-call duties of a stay-at-home mom. Got to go to the grocery store, got to be able to get food just in case the granddaughter comes home. She's got to run to the house of her parents where her mom really should go into an assisted living, She's also managing the accounting for the company. She's juggling all these things. So the angst for her was that she couldn't maintain the egoic standards of work because she was prioritizing these family things. When it came down to it, we were like, well, now you're on call with these things. If you were to eliminate anything, what would it be? It wasn't her parents. It wasn't her kids. It wasn't her grandchild. It was the actual standard of ego that was causing the most angst for her around feeling like she was inadequate. She was a failure. She was still holding herself to these crazy standards at work, not realizing that she's part-time on call now. So she's holding herself to the full-time, I don't have kids in a life standard, to where she has kids and grandkids in a life standard. And you can't manage it. So the only thing she could do was either cope with food, dieting, and trying to control her life to give her some independence for all the drama and the victimization role that she played around the whole thing. Or she could realize that her standards of work were very egotistical, narcissistic driven to try to prove herself. And she'd rather fail at that and not feel like such a victim anymore. That's that kind of life balance around that you're struggling with too, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I mean, it's going to be little by little, but I started to make small changes.
Yes. Well, and that should help. But then again, the question is when and why you take the position of victimization, especially when you're the one who's orchestrating everything.
Yeah.
Makes sense? So that to me is the little brat.
Yeah.
Why is there
True.
a little brat? And why is that little brat even getting a voice? That victim position is something we have power over. We don't have to choose to be a victim. That is a choice. That is absolutely self-centered. It's all about me.
Yeah. And that's something that has surfaced that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
That I am like that.
So that's the focus I would have for you in terms of transitioning off the protocol. We got to get to where that brat has no power. So of course I'm going to suggest that you give your body a natural transition to where you can eventually get back to that table of abundance. But right now that would be really harmful. Good news is you weren't on the round for 6 weeks and then binging. It was just a 2 week and it was a struggle, right? So the body hasn't been that far into the very low calorie protocol. So of course you need to reduce your sugars and starches, but the goal is that you no longer binge either. Where's that balance point between giving yourself the freedom, but also being responsible for caring for the body, right? What's in control here? Is it the brat or is it the logic mind that you have?
Hopefully, logically controlled.
Well, we'll find out. I don't have any expectations around that just because you have to be realistic, in desensitizing the little brat that says, I deserve this food. I want it. Get it for me. You've got to be able to get that out of control. And you got to be realistic about how much power you're giving it and desensitizing or reducing the power of that voice. Not everybody is black and white. It's not on and off. Some people it is because they're that miserable and it is that dire. Some people it needs to be gradual. So what do you want to hear? What is it that you wanted to hear? Did you want me to say, just give it up? Don't worry about it.
No, not really.
So I want you to do what you think is best then.
Okay. I'm gonna do the other phase.
Good. You just need to be present and conscious. When you're hungry, you need to give yourself food. Do not worry about the quantity. Your body will tell you how much of whatever you choose to eat based on those rhythms of hunger. You just got to listen to it, and you got to be okay when it says it's done. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking we should follow up here like next week. I want to see how you do over the weekend. See if anything happens.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to turn this off.